An hour-long game between Spirit and Paravision. Spirit's down 20k net worth with 3 heroes dead and their base is being sieged. Radahn and Collapse know that taking a 2v5 head-on fight is hopeless, especially since neither of them have buyback. When your back is against the wall, you have to think outside the box, and that's exactly what Radahn does. He smokes with Collapse and they swing all the way around behind Paravision, making it extremely easy to get on top of the enemy sniper, who would otherwise be safe behind his tanky frontliners. Spirit jumps in from behind and are able to focus Sniper first. Radahn is even able to skewer him away from his teammates and kill him. Collapse saves Radahn with a clutch Sunder and they're able to find a couple more kills. Despite being down 20k net worth, they managed to win this teamfight and a couple minutes later win the game. But how exactly does a team do this? How do you win a teamfight when you're so far behind and it seems impossible? With the help of Team Spirit, that's what we're going to learn today, because they're one of the best teams at doing this. So if you're the type of player who wants to AFK in Fountain instead of trying to defend, quit being a baby and keep watching. Because when the enemy thinks the game is in the bag, this is when they're most likely to throw. This was game 2 of this series, but we're actually going to go back to game 1. Look at this graph. This is showing Paravision as dire ahead in net worth all game long, even at one point by 20k. That's about the equivalent of an SNY, Satanic, Scotty, and Mjolnir. And Spirit still won this game. I'm going to show you the key things they do to so perfectly take teamfights when they're behind. And it all starts with punishing the enemy's misplays. Rue gets picked off mid and Paravision takes the mid barracks, then move to bottom. The rest of Spirit are pushing side lanes and farming before needing to defend. Satanic on Magnus wants to blink and RP Laurel on Ember Spirit, but he's too quick and gets off a really nice slight to dodge it, completely wasting RP. During this, Pango used roll after finding Radahn's Slark in the trees. That's 2 big teamfight ultimates wasted, and they're kinda deep in Spirit's base. Meanwhile, Spirit still have Warlock's Golem and Sand King's Epicenter. Spirit realized the enemy messed up and they can actually take this fight, despite being behind 16k net worth. They chase Paravision and with the help of this nice ward in their jungle to scout their retreat, it ends in a 3-for-4 trade and forcing 1 buyback. The 16k net worth lead for Paravision is now at 12k, and Spirit were even able to hold their bottom lane. Punishing the enemy's missteps and misplays is something high ranked and pro players are amazing at. Whether it's a misstep in the laning phase that puts someone out of position, or a whiffed ultimate in a teamfight, these moments should not be ignored. These are often the best opportunities to find good openings, especially when you're playing from behind. Paravision messed up their spells, Spirit knew this, and were able to continue chasing until they found kills, even though they seemed to be behind. It can take time and experience in the game to notice these moments, especially when they're not as obvious as a whiffed RP or a black hole. Sometimes it's even as small as the enemy using their Manta style, so now they can't remove your Orchid. Consider taking that opening and punishing them. Now, if your only hope of winning is the enemy messing up, that might not be the best approach. You often need to do more. And that brings us to the second thing that Spirit are great at. The way they play fights is in a way creating these opportunities for the enemy to mess up in the first place, and it's all about poking. If we fast forward about 5 minutes, we're in a similar situation. Paravision is pushing Spirit's high ground bottom, and Spirit are down 1 hero, this time Collapse on Sand King, which is a key part of their teamfight. Paravision has Aegis, but their RP and Reaper's Scythe are on cooldown, although Magnus has a refresher if needed. Watch how Spirit poke at Paravision while defending here, and how they do it one at a time. First, it's mostly Radahn jumping in, committing his ult in BKB, forcing the enemy spells and items as well, even burning the Aegis on the Pango. As his abilities wear off, it's now Laurel's turn on Ember Spirit to jump in and poke. He remnants in with BKB, forcing Magnus's BKB, the Pango roll, and buys so much time where Paravision are focusing on him rather than their base. All time for Collapse to respawn as well. Paravision feel pressure to make a move and start securing kills, especially since Magnus has his refreshers still available. But all of this poking has now put Paravision in the same trap we saw before. They're deep in the enemy's base with spells and items on cooldown, and Spirit aren't even at full force at this point. All of this poking in and out between Radahn, the Golem, then Laurel has bought them so much time, and they've only lost their position 5, who bought back right away. Paravision are now trying to escape, but with Collapse respawning, Spirit are dead set on chasing and punishing, just like last time. But Pochka gets a nasty 5-man Fatal Bonds that Paravision has to retreat from, and with Collapse alive now with Epicenter, the damage is too much. Spirit are eventually able to kill 3 Paravision heroes, defend their base, and hold on to the game. Being behind 18k net worth again did not stop them from finding a way to win this team fight. This example looked a lot like the one from 5 minutes earlier, but the key here was how Spirit played around each other so well. They forced Paravision to use items and abilities without getting much for it. It was like a WWE match from Radon and Laurel. One goes in, causing some commotion, then taps the other in to do the same thing. Doing this distracted Paravision from taking the barracks and bought enough time for Collapse to respawn, and more importantly, allowing him to save his buyback, which brings us to our final example on what makes Spirit so good at this. Fast forward 8 minutes and Spirit are now defending their high ground top. Rough game for these guys. Paravision is ahead 16k net worth and they just got the Aegis, Cheese, and Refresher Shard. Despite this, Spirit still find a way yet again to hold on to their high ground successfully. The first thing is how they split the fight into multiple different fights. Paravision jumped right into the high ground and a huge fight breaks out right away. At the same time, Collapse is on the side starting up his epicenter. But instead of joining the big fight going on, he jumps Paravision's backline, Jakiro and Tusk, making them unable to help their team. They're completely distracted. This allows the rest of Spirit to fight, force abilities and items out of the enemies, and burn the Aegis. Laurel then jumps on the backline to help finish off the supports Collapse was on. He's able to get one, but him and Collapse end up dying. Now this is where the second point comes in. Buybacks. Everyone on Spirit except Rue, who's a bit short on gold, has buyback ready. So this otherwise 5v5 fight is essentially a 9v5, or 9v6 if we take into account the Aegis. Not bad when considering they're behind 16k net worth to start this fight. And if they didn't have buybacks ready, this fight and the game would have been lost. And keep in mind, this teamfight isn't in some random part of the map. This is right at Spirit's base, which means it's extremely easy for them to buy back and get right back into the fight, which is exactly what they do. Their heroes that died return and now Paravision are depleted. They've used their spells, items, and they're on the retreat. Spirit ends up wiping them, bringing the net worth from 16k at the start of the fight to 12k after it. The change is actually not that much since Spirit used so many buybacks. But consider that at one point in the fight the lead was 26k, then went down to 12k at the end. With this one team fight, Spirit were able to push and end the game after some more fighting. Paravision only had 2 buybacks to work with, which wasn't enough. They tried to use couriers to drag the oncoming creep wave, but they died as well. The key here was breaking up the fight by jumping on the backline. This completely distracted Paravision supports, who are crucial in these fights for providing extra damage and control, and playing with buybacks. By doing this, Spirit are able to play more aggressively and force abilities and items out of the enemy. If they die, they know they can come right back to help clean up. And with that, this is how one of the best teams in the world finds a way to win teamfights when they're behind. It might seem intricate, but these are things you can do in your own games just as easily. Thinking outside the box, capitalizing on the enemy's misplays, poking in and out of fights to bait the enemies into making bad plays, splitting up fights when appropriate, and playing around buybacks. Next time you catch a game from Team Spirit, keep your eyes peeled if they're behind. You just might witness an awesome comeback. If you like this type of analysis, be sure to check out this other video where I talk about how pros recover after losing their lanes. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you learned something new with me.